We just as a heads up, in your handout section, you'll notice there is a file there that is a copy of tonight's PowerPoint presentation. So you can download that to use to following tonight's webinar if you have any other questions. If you do have questions during tonight's event, send them at any time. We'll get to a majority of the questions in the last 5 or 10 minutes, but we can answer some during the event if possible. So send your questions along and we'll try to get to them as best we can, considering we have over 80 people here. So with that being said, Morgan, I will pass it along to you. Everyone should be able to see his screen. And thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, Michael. I hope everybody can hear me fine. On your screen, you can see some reminders about the exam before writing. Again, and if you wrote the exam last year and you're still using the same email address, then no problem. If for some reason you have changed your email address since last year, I suggest that you contact your local board and remind them that you have a new email address, and then they'll send that to me and I'll make sure that gets uploaded onto the website. Once your president has sent me the list, your new members list or the new email list, I will have an email sent to them indicating that the passwords are ready to go out, and you'll receive an email from aboaexams@gmail.com with your individual password. In the past, people have asked me why they haven't got their password, and sometimes it's in their spam folder. So before you contact me, if you could check that, I'd appreciate it. Okay, a few specifics. The exam is from the 1st to the 15th, so it's a little bit shorter period of time. It closes at midnight on December 15th, and this is not going to shock some of you, but there are people that in the last 2 years that have started the exam at 11:59 on the very last night, so they're really taking a big chance that they will have problems and no one will be able to help them. Exam support is going to be limited on the last day after 10 o'clock, so if it's a problem that I can fix, I'll be able to do it, but if I have to get a hold of the lady that runs the exam, Martha Bradbury, after 10 o'clock in the morning, it's not likely going to happen. There's 50 questions on the exam, and the questions, of course, are randomized, so just because your question number 1 will not be the same as somebody else's. For those of you that referee high school basketball only, good news, there are no questions on the exam that are related to the rule that's being used in the colleges and the university where the shot clock is reset to 14 on an offensive rebound. As well, there are no questions regarding the no-charge semicircle area, which is not used in high school either. All other FIBA rules may be tested. Again, a couple of reminders: if you are planning to apply for a national appointment, whether it be university, college, or a summer appointment through Canada Basketball, you have to score at least 86%. ACAC officials and people who want to attend the ASAA provincials, you must score a minimum of 80%, and that has to be on the initial writing, and there is no rewrite. One or two more exam reminders. Okay, you have 75 minutes to complete the exam. So once you begin the exam, the clock starts, and you'll see a little clock on your screen while you're doing it. If for some reason you're interrupted and you don't complete within the time period, that's going to be your score. If for some reason you choose to log out during the exam, please don't do that. But if you do, your attempt is over. You can't log back in. A reminder that the exam is open book, but you're expected to write the exam independently. And so every person that writes the exam, ABOA gets a report. It has information about IP addresses, writing times, etc. And if there's irregularities, then they turn them over to the ABOA. And I really shouldn't have to state this, but I'm going to. There really is no defensible reason for people who cheat on an open book exam. You got 75 minutes, and you have the opportunity to use your rule book and your case book. When I get reports that people have completed the exam, like last year, a person wrote the exam in under 5 minutes and had very few questions incorrect, I have to answer for how that could likely be, and the answers aren't very logical or plausible. When I get reports that people have wrote the exam from the same board all within a few minutes of each other, and they seem to have exactly 100%, again, it really is hard to defend. So as I've said many times to people, you have to be honest and have integrity to be an official. And if you're cheating on exams, it just makes it that much more difficult. And it certainly doesn't look good to the national body, and it certainly doesn't look good to the ACAC or the ASAA, who pay us a lot of money to referee their basketball games. Okay, let's get into some things about the exam. Just so you remember, and this is more for new writers, but for everybody, in the exam, Team A is the team on offense, and Team B is the team on defense. Players that are listed as 1 to 5 on A or B are considered to be players, and that's important for some questions. All other numbers are substitutes. So if a player in the question is listed as A6, he or she is a substitute. However, during an interval of play, there are no substitutes. So if A6 was to be assessed a technical foul during an interval of play, then that technical is charged to A6, not to the bench. And then this has come up from a few people doing the refresher exam. If the question states Team A will attempt 2 free throws, it means that a technical foul has been called, because anybody on Team A can shoot a technical. If the question states A1 will attempt 2 free throws, or A4, whatever, it means a common foul, which is not really a FIBA term, but it's something I hope you understand, or an unsporting foul has been called. And in that case, the person who was that was fouled has to be the shooter, unless they're injured, of course. Now, disqualifying fouls, and we'll talk about those at the very end, can be either a technical or they could be of an unsporting nature, and they'd be administered accordingly. So if an official called an unsporting, or pardon me, a disqualifying technical because somebody said something, then of course anybody could shoot that. But if they did something to an individual player that was unsporting and they were disqualified, the player that was fouled would have to shoot. Disqualified players have to leave the gym, but there is a term in FIBA that is called an excluded player. An excluded player has 5 fouls, committed 5 fouls, and they cannot play anymore, but they can certainly remain on the bench. So they're not the same thing. All right? There is a new FIBA interpretations manual. It's posted on the ABOA website. At the top of it, it says 2014 Basketball Rules Official Interpretations. At the bottom of the page, it says the 1st of November 2015 second edition. If for some reason you happen to get a copy of the one that says first edition, that one is no longer valid and you need to dispose of it. So just pay close attention just in case, because some of you are pretty diligent about checking things. You have a news feed from FIBA and you may have got the initial one and not the newer version. Okay, some new interpretations. I'm not going to read through this entire thing. It's pretty self-explanatory. If for some reason Team B did not have 5 players ready to play and they can provide you with a logical reason why, there's bad weather, a bus broke down, then of course you can give them 15 minutes and no penalty is charged to them if they can get the players there. You can use your judgment, obviously, in certain circumstances. If they can't provide you with a reasonable explanation, then you have the option to give them a technical foul, and the game would still begin with a jump ball after the free throw has been shot. Okay, status of the ball. This is kind of one of those ones that's likely to be on the test. Okay, the ball does not become dead and the goal counts if made when a player commits a foul on any opponent while the ball is in control of the opponents who are in the act of shooting for a field goal, and they finish their shot with a continuous motion which started before the foul occurred. This is the new part. It's equally valid for any player or team bench personnel or of a defensive team who commit a technical foul. So in other words, a coach or a player on the bench could not take a technical foul to prevent a player from scoring. Considering that a technical foul is only one shot, obviously they had to make sure that that was formalized in the interpretation. Remember, you as the official decide when a technical is called. So you can hold your whistle in practical terms, but for the exam, understand that that now is permitted by interpretation. Okay, next one. The ball enters the basket. The value of a field goal is defined by whether the ball has entered the basket directly or if it was passed and it touched any player or touched the floor before entering the basket. So here's a rule exam tip for you. The value of a field goal attempt. A shot is determined by where the attempt was made from. The legal touching of a shot, in other words, the ball's on its upward flight, does not change the original point status. So if either team should somehow touch a shot that originated from outside the three-point area and the ball was on its upward flight and it went in the basket, the shooter would still receive 3 points. That would be for either team. Okay, I don't really know how a teammate of the shooter would touch the ball legally, but if for some reason it happened and the shot originated from outside three, it's considered to be a 3-point basket. Okay? If a player touches the ball on its way down after the ball has reached what would be known as the apex of its arc, and the ball has the possibility of entering the basket, we have a goaltending violation. If it's committed by Team A, it's a dead ball. And then a throw in at the free throw line extended. If it's by Team B, it's going to be 2 or 3 points. Now remember, you as the official are the sole judge if a ball has a chance to enter the basket. So a couple example plays here. A1 attempts a 3-point field goal. The ball is on its downward flight and clearly wide of the basket. A2 taps it in the basket. How many points? 2. So in the first example, I said the ball was touched on its way up. Essentially, the officials ignore that touching. But now it's on its way down, and in your judgment, it can't enter the basket, and it gets tapped in. It's 2 points. We've seen this play numerous times in basketball games, okay? An alley-oop, or whatever you want to call it, okay? A1 attempts a 3-point field goal. Ball's on its downward flight and clearly wide of the basket. B2 attempts to gain control of the ball and inadvertently causes it to enter the basket. How many points? 2 points, because it did not enter the basket directly. Okay? What if A1 passes the ball from the 3-point area towards A2 who is ahead on a fast break? The pass enters the basket without touching A2. How many points? 3 points. Why? Because the ball had originated from the 3-point area, didn't touch the floor or anyone else, and entered the basket directly. So even though it was a pass, because it didn't touch anyone, didn't touch the floor, it's considered to be 3 points. A1 passes the ball from the 3-point area, and the ball deflects off A2, who's also in the 3-point area. Ball enters the basket. How many points? 2 points, because it didn't enter the basket directly. Okay, so even though it originated from the 3-point area and it didn't touch anybody in the 2-point area, it's still going to be 3 points. Okay, or 2 points, pardon me, 2 points. Remember, you're the sole judge if a player has attempted a shot or passed the ball. Okay, so that example of the player passing the ball and it deflects off somebody in the 3-point area and enters the basket, you're going to judge that to be a pass, not a shot in most cases. Okay? Couple example plays. A1 passes the ball from the 3-point area. So there's the word passes, and the ball enters directly. We said this already, 3-point. A1 passes from the 3-point area, and it touches the floor in the 2-point area, or it touches the floor in the 3-point area before it enters the basket. Okay, in both cases, it's a 2-point basket. Okay, next one, 8-second, just a little clarification. If in the judgment of the officials, stopping the game and therefore stopping the 8-second count on the backcourt would place the defense at a significant disadvantage, then the official has the option to not start the 8-second count over. And so they give you an example play here. The game is tied. There's 25 seconds left in the game. 4 seconds have already been consumed of the count when the game is stopped for some reason. Shot clock error, something thrown on the floor, water on the floor, it doesn't matter. It would obviously be a significant advantage if you you started play from that spot but had 8 seconds to get it across the center line, because now they could hold it for almost the entire possession and shoot right before the end of the game, eliminating the chance for the opponent to have a shot. So in this case, it would give them a disadvantage. So you would announce before handing the ball to both teams that there's going to be 4 seconds on the count. Okay, ball returned to the backcourt. Okay, A1 is standing with both feet in the backcourt near the center line when A1 attempts a pass to A2 who's also standing with both feet in the backcourt. So neither player is in the front court, but the ball on the pass touches the front court, and then it returns to a player standing in the backcourt. That's a legal play. So a few years ago, that would have been an illegal play, but that's now a legal play because no Team A player had the ball in the front court. Okay, here's the tricky part, and this is where the interpretation has been clarified. Once the ball touches the front court, though, the 8-second count ends. And once A2 catches it, another 8-second count begins. So in effect, I guess a team could have 3 possessions of 8 seconds and never actually have any of their players touch their feet into the front court. Unlikely, obviously. Okay, A1 is in his backcourt, passes the ball towards the front court. It deflects off officials standing on the playing court with both feet straddling the center line. And then it's touched by A2 in the backcourt. Again, a few years ago, this would have been a violation. Now it's a legal play, okay, because the ball has got into the front court and it touched someone or the floor itself and has somehow come back into the backcourt legally. Okay, again, new 8-second count. Okay, so just to review, and for everybody, a ball pass from the backcourt to the front court, the 8-second count ends if the ball touches the floor, a player in the front court, so it could be a player from either team in the front court, and an official in the front court. Okay, it only can be a violation for illegally returning the ball to the backcourt if a Team A player catches a pass from the backcourt. So just touching him is not enough. They have to control the ball in the front court. Again, if you have this happen in a game, you're likely going to get a reaction from the coaches, but if you don't call it, you'll actually be correct. So player catches a pass from the backcourt, has both feet completely in the front court, then subsequently causes the ball to go into the backcourt and is the last to touch the ball in the front court and the first to touch it in the backcourt. You now have a backcourt violation. So they actually have to have possession of the ball in the front court. They have to be the last to touch it in the front court and the first to touch it in the backcourt. Okay? So a reminder that a player who's dribbling the ball must have both feet completely in the front court and the ball must touch the front court for the ball to have achieved front court status and for the 8-second count to end. So a player who catches a ball has to have both feet in the front court for the 8-second count to end. A player dribbling the ball has to not only have both feet completely in the front court, but the ball must touch the front court on the dribble. Okay, a reminder, there's airborne exceptions to this rule put in a few years ago by FIBA. On the opening jump, if a player tapped the ball, in this case A1 towards A2, and if A2 was stationed initially in the front court and jumped in the air and catches the ball and lands in the back court, that would now be a legal play, or it has been a legal play for a few years. And obviously the defensive team, if it intercepts a pass, can be airborne from the front court and land in their back court, and that would be a legal play. This is not a poll question, but just something for you to think about. Okay, at the start of quarter 3, A1 passes to A2. Before catching the ball, A2 jumps from the front court, catches the ball, and lands in Team A's backcourt. Would this be a violation, or would it be a legal play? Of course, it would be a violation because the player had status in the front court, so therefore, and when he caught the ball, his position is deemed to have been in the front court. Now they have control, and then they land in the backcourt. So they've met the 3 criteria for a backcourt violation. I'll just suggest to you that in games I observe, this happens more frequently than you'd think, and most of the time officials do not call it, and that's a violation of the rules, and it should be called if it happens. Okay, we talked a little bit about disqualifying fouls earlier, and I said I would come back to it. So again, a disqualifying foul is a flagrant unsportsmanlike action by a player or team bench personnel. If a coach is given a disqualifying foul, then obviously they need to be replaced by the assistant coach. If it's a non-contact situation, 2 free throws. So it could be because of something they say, and it's a disqualifying foul, but even though it's because it seems like a technical, it's not. It's a disqualifying foul, 2 shots. If it happens in the act of shooting, 2 shots, or 3 shots if it was a 3-shot. And if it happened on a shot attempt and the ball went in the basket, they would get 1 additional free throw. So there's an anomaly in the rules. Okay? Statement 38.1 says, with a disqualification, a person is no longer a team member or team bench personnel. Therefore, he may no longer be penalized for additional unsportsmanlike behavior. So example 38.2 in the book says, A1 is disqualified for flagrant unsportsmanlike behavior. He leaves the playing court and verbally insults an official. Interpretation. A1 is already disqualified and may no longer be penalized. The referee shall send a report to the organizing body. However, 38.5 would initially seem to be contradictory. A substitute, an excluded player, a team follower, is disqualified, and the coach is charged with a technical foul if it happens in this case. A1 has been charged with his 5th personal foul. Frustrated, he verbally insults the official and is disqualified. Because he was only out on his 5th personal foul, that becomes charged to the coach as a B foul. So we have this weird anomaly. If you throw him out first, by rule you're not allowed to give him any more penalties. But if they commit 5 fouls and they are excluded and they say something, it goes on the coach. So what would you do if 38.2 happened in a high school game? Okay, by rule you have to note it, and you should. Okay, in practical terms, I recommend that you instruct the coach to remove the player immediately, and if that doesn't happen, assess a technical foul to the coach because of the rules you see right there on the screen. Okay, any deliberate or repeated non-cooperation or non-compliance with the spirit or intent of this rule shall be considered as a technical foul. So what we're not going to do is disqualify a high school player and have him stand there and berate us and then act like we can't do anything. You can ask the coach for help. If the coach refuses, give the coach a technical and continue on with the game. And if you can't gain control, you can always suspend play and take it up with the league afterwards. Okay, some quick hitters to help you with the exam. Okay, intervals of play. Know when an interval of play begins. Know when it ends. So for instance, an interval of play begins when the official tosses the ball. The interval of play ends, when the official tosses the ball. So what would happen in this case? Prior to the ball being tapped, A1 pushes A2, a foul is called. What type of foul? And what cannot by rule then happen? I don't know if that's very good English. Okay, it would be a technical foul. Even though he pushed him, it's a technical foul. Okay, because it occurred during an interval of play before the ball was tossed. All fouls during intervals are technicals. What can't happen? A team cannot substitute someone in to shoot the technical. So in all other situations in a basketball game, if a technical foul occurs, a substitute can enter the game to shoot the technical. In this case, not allowed unless B1 was injured when A1 committed the foul. Then obviously they could replace him. Okay, there's been a modification to the traveling rule. This was put in last year. So A1 jumps with the ball and is legally blocked by B1. Both players return to the playing court with both of them having one or both hands firmly on the ball. This is now a held ball. It used to be traveling. It's now a held ball. Okay, the key thing here is, does the defender retain his or her hand on the ball as the shooter goes to the floor? Okay, if the shooter blocks the shot but doesn't retain their hand on the ball, and the defender blocks the shot and doesn't retain their hand on the ball, and then the shooter returns to the floor, we have a traveling violation, is same as always. Okay, you're the judge of this. Okay, I would suggest to you that at younger levels of basketball, quite frequently shots are blocked and players return with their hand, with the offensive and defensive player having their hands on the ball. Okay, jump ball, all the rules apply. Ball didn't touch the rim, no reset if the offensive team retains possession, etc. Okay, Let's just kind of quickly review here a little bit about pivoting, because there'll be questions on the rules exam about traveling. Okay, so if a player catches the ball with both feet on the floor, they may lift either foot, and the one that remains in contact is the pivot foot. If they catch the ball with one foot on the floor, that is the pivot foot. If they lift that foot, they must either pass or shoot. So we're still seeing situations where officials are allowing players to jump in the air for a shot, and when the player realizes that the shot's going to be blocked, they're dropping the ball and being allowed to dribble. That's illegal. If the pivot foot leaves the floor, the only thing the player can do is pass or shoot. If they return to the floor and touch the ball, they've traveled. Okay? If they catch the ball with neither foot in contact with the floor and they land with both feet simultaneously, they may move, but the foot that remains in contact with the floor is their pivot foot. And if it's lifted, it cannot touch the floor again while the player's in possession. Okay? So think about that when you're doing the rules test. If there's questions about traveling, they have to be, you have to read carefully. When does the player release the ball, if they're dribbling, and so forth. Okay? These are some good things to review. Status of the ball. So when does the ball become live, as well as when and how does it become dead? Of course, it becomes live when it leaves the hand of the official on a jump, when the official places it at the disposal of a free throw shooter or at an inbounder. Okay? That may have some implications for shots counting. Okay? And it certainly has implications for correctable errors, and we'll get to those later. Okay? Jump balls and alternating possession. When does an alternating possession end? Okay? So again, the team that has the ball completes their alternating possession when the ball has been passed onto the floor. Okay? If a foul is committed by the offensive team during an alternating possession throw-in, they lose the ball because they've committed an offensive foul or a team control foul, but the arrow stays, so you need to know that. Okay? Team control. When does team control begin? Okay? Begins when the team gains control off of a rebound. They gain control out of bounds on a throw-in, and it ends, obviously, when a shot is released, when a violation occurs, okay, when the ball goes out of bounds. Those scenarios, the ball team control ends when it goes out of bounds and possession changes. In other words, the defense gets it. Okay, timeout. Remember when a coach can call a timeout. Okay, they have to call timeouts in situations that the rules allow. When there's a dead ball after a whistle for a foul or a violation, in the last 2 minutes, or pardon me, at any point in the game when they've been scored on. Okay, and there are situations where if you stop the game because of situations that are either errors by the officials or errors by the table, and you sound your whistle, then you can give a timeout. However, there are exceptions. Near the end of a game, if the team that scores, the coach jumps up and requests a timeout, and the table gets flustered and hits the horn, and you blow your whistle because you think that the defensive team has asked for a timeout, and you get over there and you find out that they got flustered and the offensive coach requested a timeout, you're to stop everything and bring the players back, because of course you didn't stop the game, you just responded to a horn. So you need to read the rule book on those, and there's not any questions on the rule exam about it, but it's just good to remind yourself about when a coach can have a timeout. And then in the last 2 minutes, remember, the coach can advance the ball to the front court throw-in spot in most cases. I'll give you one exception later. Okay? Substitution. When does a player become a substitute, and vice versa? When does a substitute become a player? And of course, that has to do with when you beckon the player on the floor, when they report to the table during a timeout. And that can have implications for injuries, could have implications for technical fouls. Once a player receives, as we saw earlier, a fifth foul, they automatically are out of the game. You don't have, so anything they do after that is considered to be done by an excluded player, which goes as a bench technical. Okay. Dribbling, when does a player begin a dribble? So a reminder that a player begins a dribble when they've pushed the ball to the floor, but it also, and this is one of those weird ones in FIBA, a player who has not yet dribbled can throw the ball off the backboard, and that's considered a dribble. So if for some reason, this has come up on interpretations in the past, a player catches a pass, throws it towards the backboard because they're running so fast and believe they can't dribble, and then they chase it and get it, they're allowed to do that. They're not allowed to dribble it again, but that is not illegal. Okay? The Articles 28 and 29 that deal with the 8-second count and the 24-second count. So again, a reminder that the 8-second count and the 24-second count start at the same time when the ball's touched on a throw-in. They start, the 8-second count and the 24-second count will start when the defensive team gains control of a rebound. So not on the touch of a rebound, but actually gaining control. Okay. Obviously, the offensive team gets their 24 seconds in high school when they gain control of their own offensive rebound. Different in the college and university level now. Okay, the shot clock and the 8-second count don't reset when the ball is deflected out of bounds and the team on offense retains the ball. So if A1 is passing to A2 in the backcourt and gets knocked out of bounds, and your count is at whatever the count is at, 4 or 5 seconds, before you hand the ball to the shooter, you're to tell to the inbounder, you're to tell the inbounder how many seconds are in your count, especially if you have a discrepancy with the shot clock. Okay, when does the count not reset or the clock not reset? In the backcourt, the 8-second count would not reset if there was a tie-up and the offensive team retained possession. So if you've counted 5 seconds and then there's a tie-up, you would again tell the inbounder how many seconds you have left. Okay, Article 30, we've already been through the whole backcourt scenario, but just a reminder that the center line is part of the backcourt. So when their foot touches the line, if they're in the front court and their foot touches the center line, they now have entered the backcourt. So that would be a violation. Goaltending and interference. Okay, there may be questions on the exam about goaltending or interference, but there are never questions that ask you to say whether a play is goaltending or interference. You're not going to be asked that. Okay, so what I'm getting at there is you may not always remember the specific definition of goaltending or interference, but you have an idea that something illegal has happened to a shot, either by the ball being touched on its downward flight, which is goaltending, or somebody touching the basket and causing the ball to miss. That would be interference. Those are not the only ways that those could happen, but there's no questions on the exam that say the ball is on its downward flight and it's touched by the defensive team. Is that goaltending or interference? They're not trying to trick you in that way. Okay? So here's a little reminder here. Field goal attempt by A1. B1 commits a foul on the shooter. The ball hits the ring and is bouncing above it when B2 slaps the ball away. Is this legal? Okay? So because the official's whistle has sounded, no, it's not. So that would be an example of goaltending or basket interference. Because the whistle or the horn to end the quarter, no player can touch a ball that has touched the ring and has a chance to enter the net back. Doesn't include the shot clock. Okay, so if the shot's in the air and the horn sounds and the ball hits the ring, they can clean that off. Okay, that's legal. Okay, now if there was a foul in there and a whistle went, then that would apply. Okay, Rule 6 covers fouls. It's good to review things like legal guarding position. Player has to have both feet on the floor facing the defender. After that, the player can move laterally, or as the rule book says, obliquely, in other words, not forward, to maintain that, and can be airborne if they've maintained legal guarding position. A player who controls the ball should expect to be guarded, so there's no reason for the defense to give time or distance. So an airborne player who catches the ball and returns to the floor and puts their foot down, and then after that comes into contact with the defender who has legal guarding position, that's a charging foul. Okay, player who does not control the ball, okay, and is stationary, then there is no time or distance. They should expect the defensive player to get right up as close to them short of contact. If an offensive player is moving and does not have the ball, then of course time and distance applies. So they have to have a chance to take the legal number of steps that are covered in the rule book. Okay? Screening. If it's within the field of vision of the player on defense, then that screen can be as close to that player as possible without contact. If it's outside the field of vision, again, they must give that person on defense a chance to move, so they have to give them, the offensive player has to give a step. If the defender is moving, and we see this all the time, time and distance applies. Okay, because they can't see the screener coming. Okay, Article 35 covers double fouls. Whoops, sorry. Let me go back here. Okay, double fouls. Those 4 conditions that are needed: player fouls, physical contact between 2 opponents fouling each other, and both are committed at approximately the same time. Okay, this one's right out of the rule book, and it's been on tests in the past, and people ask me this one all the time. Okay, B1 pushes off A1, and that's called a personal foul. A1 at approximately the same time hits B1 with an elbow, called an unsportsmanlike foul. Is this a double foul? And the answer is yes. So even though you have an unsportsmanlike foul, which is normally 2 in possession, in this case, it's a double foul. There are no shots allowed, and the team in possession of the ball, Team A, would retain it. So you'd have this weird situation of A1 committing an unsportsmanlike foul, but his or her team retaining possession. Okay? Now, in a game, you're the judge of whether or not fouls occurred at approximately the same time. You're the judge of that. Okay? And again, the spot of resumption in a double foul scenario is nearest to where the fouls occurred, not where the ball was when the foul occurred. Unsportsmanlike foul. Again, 4 situations that could involve an unsportsmanlike foul. Okay? Not making an attempt to play the ball. Excessive contact. Contact by the defensive player on a player who has essentially a clear path to the basket. Or a foul in the last 2 minutes by a defensive player while the team on offense still has the ball in their hand out of bounds. Okay? Okay, most of the time, those are 2-shot fouls, but it could be 3 if it was a 3-point attempt that missed. And of course, if it's a ball that goes through the basket on a field goal attempt of 2 or 3 points and you call an unsportsmanlike foul, then only 1 shot. Okay, this is the time when I said I would mention that if a coach requested a timeout, there is one exception. Okay, coach in the last 2 minutes requests a timeout after an unsportsmanlike foul. Even though you might think they get the ball at the throw-in spot, they don't. If there's an unsportsmanlike foul or a technical foul, it must always be resumed by a throw-in from the center line. So if a coach asks for a timeout, you might want to be a helpful official and just mention to him or her that you'll grant them the timeout, but they will be throwing it in from center. That may determine whether they take the timeout or not. Okay, disqualifying foul. Again, we said this could be against a player or team bench personnel. So in this case, you would identify the person. You would identify the player by number if he or she is doing something on the bench that you feel merits their being disqualified. They're saying something. They've made a gesture that you believe is so outrageous that they need to go. Okay? Again, that is important. Okay? And the same principle applies. Again, it's a 2-shot foul, 3 if it happens on a 3-point attempt. If it goes through the basket, 1 shot. Okay? Fighting. So fights that involve substitutes or excluded players are not double fouls because they didn't meet the other criteria. Okay? So if a substitute or an excluded player enters the floor because of a fight, of course they're disqualified. Doesn't matter how many come on the floor. It's 1 foul on each team, 1 technical, and they're disqualified. Okay? And you must resume at center. Okay? And the reason for that is because you have multiple spots where the fouls occurred. The player stepping onto the floor in a fight scenario is in and of itself exclusion. Okay? So if you had two players that had a fight, you treat that like a double foul because you have one specific spot. Two players that were in the game, not two players that come off the bench. More than two players, even if they were players in the game, resume the game at center. Okay, a reminder that team fouls are only fouls committed by players. Okay, technical fouls on coaches, any disqualifying fouls on bench personnel are not part of the team foul total. Okay, Rule 42, special situations. That means multiple fouls have occurred. Charge all fouls, determine the order that they occurred, cancel all penalties. If there are no fouls left over, resume the game as if the fouls didn't happen. So it could be out of bounds after a field goal or a basket. If its ball was in the air, you'd go to the arrow. If there's still fouls remaining, shoot the free throws. And a reminder that 2 one-shot penalties don't equal a 2-shot foul. So A1 is fouled on an unsuccessful 2-point attempt, and then A1 and Coach A are each assessed a technical. You'd report all and you'd shoot them in the order. And because you have 2 technicals here, you could have 2 different Team B shooters. Okay, free throws, again, reminder that the free throw shooter's violation takes precedence over all the other ones. So on a question on an exam, if it talks about the free throw shooter violating and an opponent violating, the free throw shooter's violation is enforced and the other one is ignored. Otherwise, all violations by opponents would end up being using the AP process. And then correctable errors, I'm not going to go through all the correctable errors. You should review them. I'm just going to point to this scenario here. The key thing here is that there's a dead ball, an error occurs, the ball becomes live, the ball becomes dead, and once that ball becomes live again, now you can no longer correct the error. So it has to fall within that window. So here's the error. They didn't tell you what to do. You allowed the game to resume. The ball became live. It became dead. Remember, the ball can becomes dead, for instance, when a field goal is made. The minute that somebody picks that ball up after that made field goal, now the ball's live again. If the horn sounds to tell you that there's an error, it's too late. Okay? And again, scoring errors are not considered under Article 44, and you could correct them. So if a 3-point field goal was recorded as a 2 or a 2 was recorded as a 3, you could correct that at any time before the referee signs the score sheet. So I'm going to try to update the refresher exam this week. Hopefully I can have it on the ABOA website. I will tell you that, again, cable interpreter Dave Weary has put a 25-question refresher exam on the Post-Play Express from October. And if that's on the ABOA website. And if anybody on this webinar is a local president and I haven't received your new member list, I need it as soon as possible. Michael, I did this in 44 minutes. If there's questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Morgan, your timing is unbelievable. I am so impressed. I think that's the first time anyone who's ever had to handle rules did it right on the spot. So thank you very much. We actually, so far, and this will be your last chance, folks, for questions. We'll only take a few minutes if there are any. It actually looks like so far none. One comment is if you are new and you're not sure where to get a rule book, the rule book is online at FIBA.com. So if you go search FIBA.com and go to the links at the bottom of the page, it'll take you into sections that contain the rule book. So there is no hard copy of the rule book. You'll have to print it off yourself or have a digital copy on your phone or tablet or computer. And just one other question that was important to note is if an offensive player leaves their cylinder, jumps and leaves their cylinder into the path of a defensive player, an offensive foul can be called if we deem that the contact is either excessive or places the defensive player at a disadvantage. But that can be up to your judgment whether it's a offensive foul or no call. I think we won't be able to probably post anything on the website because our webmaster is going to be out of town, but we will find a way to get everything out to you folks via your local board or some other method. And once again, if you haven't had a chance to download the handouts page, which is the PowerPoint presentation from tonight, go ahead and do so rather quickly. And other than that, thank you so much, Morgan, for your time tonight. And thanks everyone for taking the time out. Good luck on the exam. And I'm sure everyone will do smashingly. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Michael.
See you, Morgan.
Okay.